Hi,
There you
guys.
go.
How's it going?
It's going great. Glad to be here.
Good.
Well, thanks for joining me for this annual, first ever. Maybe it'll be annual. Maybe it'll be a little more frequently than that. Conversation. Let's call it a conversation. I think the way I marketed it was like a Reddit AMA style Q&A. So I appreciate you both joining me. For those of you who don't know, I'm Megan Shapiro. I am a construction attorney who is obsessed with proactive risk management. And so I like to talk a lot about that. And fortunately, I'm super lucky that Josh and Goose were willing to join me for this conversation. Josh?
Yeah, I'm Josh Luebker. I've been in the construction industry for 9 years. I did project management for 8 of those and been a fractional CFO for over a year now. Just trying to help coach everybody else up on the construction management side to avoid burnout and kind of avoid the gray areas, if you will, of construction.
Nice. And Goose, our special guest.
And I am Goose Dunham, ex-manufacturing paper maker, turned financial advisor, helping people hang their hard hats up early. And amazingly, have found myself ingrained in the construction world. Didn't think this would happen, but excited to be here and give some insights from a different perspective.
Now, I have to ask the first question, going a little off script. So you guys are going to kind of maybe jab me a little bit in the DMs over there. But why do you say that you're surprised to find yourself in the construction side of LinkedIn, Goose?
When I set out, I really expected to work specifically with people in manufacturing. And when I came across you guys, I was like, there's so much overlap between the manufacturing world and the construction world. And then I had this coffee chat with you and I said, I've got to do this. I just have really thoroughly enjoyed my time learning about the construction industry and getting my own insights into it.
Well, thank you for plugging my coffee chats. If you haven't scheduled a coffee chat with me yet, please do. The link is in my newsletter. Okay, are you guys ready to go? I've got some preloaded questions. And for anybody who might be actually watching this, we really do want this to be interactive. We want this to be a process together, and you actually can join us on camera and come up on the stage. I got to get like in the camera. There we go. Come up on stage with us if you want. Just put a comment in there, and I can bring you up on the stage to ask your question and to have the conversation. So we do have some preloaded questions from people who submitted them in advance. So we'll start there. And while Goose and Josh are weighing in on the questions and maybe a little bit of me too, I'm going to keep an eye on the comments in the chat. So again, if anybody has any questions, even if you don't want to come up on camera, drop your question in the chat and we can at least talk about it. So with that, let's start it off with, how do you justify a risk management program that spends money on the front end without a guarantee of saving money on the back end? Josh, you want to take that one first?
I will for sure. Personally, I don't believe that there's any risk management plan that doesn't, or program that won't have a return on investment in the end. You might not see it like dollars and cents bottom line, but not to plug Megan or anything with her program, but literally anything you do to train people to understand the contract better, project managers, the people that are the first ones that are actually going to see these problems, you're never going to have an issue where you're not going to make some kind of money on the back end, whether that's a delay, a change order. It's all lumped into the contract of when you need to do things. And if you don't, you miss out on all of that extra money.
Yeah, absolutely. Goose, anything to add from the manufacturing side, or because you're an honorary construction person with us?
I think what used to drive me up a wall in manufacturing is to identify a potential problem. We didn't really know exactly what it was. We would find the person that could come help us fix it and or tell us it's not a problem, decide not to spend that money. And lo and behold, 3 months later, we were down calling in that same person for 3 times as much as we would have spent on the front end, plus the downtime associated with it. So, one of the things when I saw your risk management stuff was this is so important regardless of the industry that you're in, to have that review and to get the expert involved when you have the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. What are the most effective strategies for identifying and mitigating unseen risks in large-scale construction projects? Goose, why don't we start with you on this one?
So while I don't have as much experience on, say, a building, I did run a couple of $1 million projects at the mill, and it's really diving down into the details, right? I think that when you look at it big picture, it's easy to skip over something. It's easy to think somebody's got it handled. But if you're not asking your project manager or your contractors those specific questions, you'll miss a risk that is right in front of your face. We've had several projects go wrong for that reason because we just didn't ask the question and we made an assumption.
That's a great point about assumptions. I'm going to weigh in on this one, but Josh, I'm going to let you go first.
I'm just impressed that Goose, having no construction experience, nailed that one, first off. But effective strategies I've found for just identifying and mitigating those risks, it depends how large scale we're talking. I mean, like 300 million plus, like there's a process. You're going to have multiple people, multiple project managers on site for one trade, for one general contractor, for everybody. So it's important to establish your chain of command and kind of your how everything is going to move up the chain and down the chain and how we're going to be effective and quick to respond. It also is down to the basics. Like we don't want to get in over our head. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. It still takes submittals. It still takes reading a contract. It still has, you just do them one time and you do it right the first time. And that's going to help you mitigate more. And then you're also going to have more time in the back end. If you have one mistake, because you will, it gives you more time to react during those phases. If you did 90% of it right and you messed up 10, you're fine. You got time to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I agree wholeheartedly with what both of you said. I think the one thing that I would add that I think is pretty generally applicable regardless of the scale of the project, I think it really just comes down to sort of uncovering those risk blind spots, which is something I sort of talk a lot about. And I think the most effective way to sort of uncover those blind spots is to ask the questions that you don't necessarily usually ask or think about asking. And I think one really effective way to do that is to have somebody that's not intimately familiar with either this particular project or this particular process come in and sort of from a high level view go like, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but I've got these questions about your processes, about your people, about what you're doing to prepare for these types of, large scale projects, or like I said, even small scale projects. And sort of through that dialogue, that asking questions, especially from the sort of outsider perspective, I think it really uncovers, it can really uncover a lot, not only of blind spots, things that haven't necessarily been taken into consideration, but it also helps you sort of reframe and look at maybe policies and procedures in a different way. Maybe you thought that you had a really great management or mitigation strategy, but it's never been tested. And so maybe somebody else has a different view about how you could do it. Or you've got something that's always been working because you haven't encountered something that makes it worse. You don't necessarily think to audit it, to check in, to make sure, like, could we be really doing this better? So I think there's really something to be said for sort of the outsider perspective. And it doesn't have to be a consultant or somebody outside of the company. It just has to be somebody that's outside of that department or outside of that conversation, typically outside of that project.
Yeah. Maybe like in the region or something.
Someone, like you said, somebody not intimately involved so that they're willing to ask the question because it's okay. They weren't intimately involved. They don't know. And it can highlight so many things within that project scope that may have issues, may have risks associated with them that you wouldn't have called otherwise.
Absolutely. So I'm going to deviate from our pre-selected questions because Jesse, hi Jesse, thanks for joining us. He's got a really great question over here in the chat. And I think we're all going to have some different answers for this one. So Jesse wants to know what's the most dangerous risk.
I think you should go first, Megan.
Oh, you think I should take that? Boy.
Yes, I do.
Well, like a true attorney, hashtag not legal advice. Like a true attorney, my answer is always going to be like, well, it depends. Everybody's favorite answer from an attorney. But truly, because most dangerous is subjective, right? So, the name of this conversation is risk to revenue. And so if you look at it, the way I'm looking at the question is through the lens of what's the most dangerous to the bottom line? What's the most dangerous to profitability? What's the most dangerous to revenue? And I think the most dangerous risk to revenue is the unidentified or discounted risk. And that's, again, a little bit of like a mealy mouth lawyer answer. And so I apologize for that. I hate when I give answers like that. But truly what I mean by that is anything can be catastrophic if you're not taking it seriously enough or if you didn't see it coming. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about like a safety risk, like, an OSHA violation, or if we're talking about we don't necessarily have the right insurance policy for the type of work that we're performing. Like a great example of that is, there was a particular contractor who performed the bulk of their work off site, like off of the project site at their own facility. But because it was prefabricated materials, when they would go to deliver it, they would actually install it at that point, but their insurance didn't cover any work that was done at the actual job site. And they had no idea that they were just like out there operating completely uncovered. So that's a pretty big risk to revenue if they end up having an accident, a catastrophic loss. They think they're covered and then there's no insurance. So for me, that's the most dangerous risk, is the one that's unidentified.
How would you come across that, Megan, from like a project manager standpoint or somebody high up in a company? How would I even know to think like, how do I read my policy to even know that? I'm not trying to set you up and give you a softball question. Like I want to know because I don't like to not know things like that. That's important. Yeah,
that's a great question. So I think there's kind of two different answers to that. One, you should read your policy. And I know when people hear insurance policy, by the way, I'm not an insurance person. I love talking about insurance, but it's because I hate insurance. I'm not an insurance person. I'm not trying to sell you insurance. I actually hate insurance. I think it screws people over most of the time. Yes, I said it. But you should read your policy. And by that, I don't mean read all 85 pages of your CGL policy. The actual policy language itself is really about 3 pages, and they do make it fairly easy to read. They're not using super complicated words where you need a thesaurus and a dictionary next to you to be able to get through it. You can pretty quickly look at what your coverages are. If you have any level of sophistication with looking at CGL policies, any types of insurance policies, you should be able to figure it out just by reading it yourself. If, however, you don't have those skills, or you don't have access to the policy, or you just don't want to do that, or you don't trust yourself, if you have a good broker and a good relationship with your broker, they will 100% know the answer to that question. They should know the answer to that question as soon as they answer the phone. If you've been with that broker for a while and they know what the scope of your particular work is, I don't want to say trade because we could have GCs on here too, right? But your broker should know exactly what work you're performing, and they should know what coverage they sold you and exactly what it covers and exactly what it doesn't cover. So your broker is the one who can answer that question 100% of the time. And hot tip, if your broker can't answer that question, you need a new broker.
She said it.
Yep, I said it. I'm not here to make friends, people.
Hot take for sure.
Right? I know. Everybody's like dropping off. They're like, and leave.
No, that's really good advice.
I'm going to get off of this and I'm going to have no followers anymore after this.
It reminds me of the first time I read a contract. I was like, this is a lot of language that I don't really understand, and I hated it. But I think, like you said, just read a policy. If you read a couple, you'll start to figure it out. I do believe that, and I do think a broker is probably a good place to start. I didn't even think about that. I just figured they're all gonna not tell me the truth. Well, slimy salespeople.
Your own carrier and the claims adjusters for your own carrier, they are self-interested. I won't go so far as to call them slimy because I don't know who all is watching this live feed. I won't go so far as to call them slimy, but what I will say is they are self-interested. right?
Yeah.
Insurance carriers are businesses like any other business. They're in business to make money. The way insurance companies make money is by collecting your premiums and not paying out your claims. So
Right.
it doesn't take a genius to figure out how they do that. And so your claims adjusters have quotas, they have sales managers, they have all of the hierarchy of like incentivizations to not pay out on your claims. So I would say if you have those questions, do not go to your claims adjuster, do not go to your carrier. But your broker ideally should be an independent third-party broker who's offering policies from a variety of different carriers, and they should have your back. They should give you the honest answer. Now they might try to upsell you, whatever. I mean, that's going to depend on your broker. Not all of them do, but they might. But they should still be able to answer your question. And at the end of the day, hot tip, if they've sold you the wrong policy, their asses are on the line for that, right? I mean, that's an E&O problem for them. So they are talking about self-interested. They are self-interested in making sure that they're giving you the policies and the protections and the coverages that you need. Because at the end of the day, if you have a claim for something that you thought was covered and they sold you the wrong policy, I'm going to advise you as your attorney, if you're my client, okay, well, you don't have coverage, so we can deal with actually defending the claim. But now we're going to turn around and sue your broker for malpractice.
I like it.
Sorry, I rant about insurance.
What about you?
On this one, or should we move on?
No, I want to hear Goose's.
Okay, so I'm gonna take it more literal, and I'm gonna say there's two that you can go with. The true safety risk. I mean, if you look at a project, it gets shut down if you have an incident, a major incident, right? And go back to my manufacturing days. We were removing a fairly large piece of equipment. We didn't think through the process. We didn't think through what had to happen. And we got lucky. I will say we got lucky. But we were removing this with no fall protection, and had the individual or individuals in this instance fallen from where they were, we're shut down for days. I mean, so you really have to take a look at the job and make sure you have the right safety equipment and that your people are actually following the guidelines of how to use that equipment, which is also a problem. I know it was in manufacturing, and I'm going to say it's probably a similar problem in construction, because safety equipment's not always easy or nice to wear, much less comfortable to wear.
Right. It's always a hindrance, especially safety
always
glasses.
A hindrance. You can always find a reason not to use it and wear it.
Right.
Second thing,
I'm gonna jump in and plug for the women in construction, especially if you're a woman in construction and you have ill-fitting PPE. And there's a lot of people out there talking about that. I'm not one of those people. That's not my battle to fight, but I do want to represent as the woman in the conversation. Ill-fitting PPE for women is a major, major problem.
Yeah, they make them like supersized. Go ahead. Goose, sorry.
I mean, we could go on and on about PPE.
Right.
The other one is just a lack of communication and coordination amongst groups. The amount of times we've had jobs slow up or stop completely because the next group wasn't ready because there was just a straight up lack of communication. Plan was there. Nothing goes as planned. Everything gets off plan. So the communication between groups is so important to keep a job either on schedule or to catch it back up to schedule. And just because you're ahead of schedule, it can quickly get derailed by a lack of communication. So I would put a plug in for communication and having a plan around how that's supposed to work.
100%.
Okay, Josh, this one's for you. What are your top tips for construction managers to prevent burnout while ensuring project success and team well-being?
I feel like I had to take a deep dive when I left the industry from full-time to fractional and think about what burnout was to me. Honestly, burnout to me was I'd get home and I'd just be stressed about, do I see myself wanting to do this forever? I mean, you're a construction manager. I went to school. I didn't go to school for it, but there's a lot of people that spend years going to school, years in creating their career, if you will. And it's not easy to just think I want to give it up, but it was almost that stressful at times. And the way that I really learned how to cope with it was I leaned on the things I enjoyed, which to me, that's going to be coaching and mentoring the up and coming. That's why when I last October decided I was going to go on my own and just kind of create this business, that's what started it all. But to wrap it all up really quick, I think if you have good processes that people understand why you're doing processes, not we just do processes, this is how we do it, period. This is why, this is the process. If there's a better way, please do it. If you find a different way that's going to make it more effective, or if there's a roadblock that you can't do it the typical way, here's why. You figure out how to get there and making it so it's every time. I'm a big believer in sharpening the sword, doing everything the correct way every time. And that way you don't create burnout for other employees. Like accounting people get really burnt out by having to re-enter invoices for something stupid, like not putting a PO together correctly, just because it saves time to not put a dollar amount. You just go ahead and put it in. You don't put a cost code to it. You don't put dollar amount to it. You just put $1. Here's the PO number. Send it. Forget it. And then it creates a lot of headache in the back end. So I personally think if you get those processes, that's just one example. You get those processes down, though, and that really helps.
So I'm going to deviate a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you explain the concept of a fractional fill in the blank anything?
Fractional anything.
Thank you,
yeah.
Megan.
You're welcome. I did that just for you, Goose, because of our conversation before we went live.
So a fractional C-suite executive, if you will, is somebody who has the experience and the knowledge and the ability to do it full-time. But if you have companies, there's a need, obviously, of companies that are just small enough they can't afford a full-time COO, CFO, CMO, all of those acronyms, medical officer or anything. Or sorry, not medical officer. That's my wife's chief marketing officer, things like that. It basically gives you a way to, instead of paying like $250,000 a year for somebody like that, you pay a fraction of that. You get a fraction of that time, but you don't have enough problems that you need somebody full-time. You don't need a full-time CFO most of the time until you're like 50, 60 million and you actually are really trying to grow into a massive company. Is that a good example of that? Think of us as like part-time, but we work for multiple companies at the same time.
Can I just say I love the comments coming in?
I know the comments are great. The comments are great. Jesse says I'm fractionally.
I did see the alcohol comment, by the way. It is alcohol.
100%.
It depends where you are, but Tito's is pretty good.
I'm a brown liquor kind of person.
This is awesome.
That must be the difference between manufacturing and construction.
I guess so. It was a couch and whiskey.
Oh boy, yikes! Okay, I'm gonna steer us back on track, guys.
Oh.
Because what I'm gonna do, I see Heath is here, and I see Heath is here, and I told Heath, I warned him in advance that if he showed up, I was gonna make him come up on camera. So Heath, I'm gonna tell you, I sent you the link to join us in your DMs on LinkedIn. So if you hit the link, you'll show up here, and I can bring you in. Don't worry, it won't have you like immediately live with us. You'll be in a waiting room, so I can bring you in. But I do have your question like coming up. So join us in the room because we've got some clarifying questions before we feel like we can actually answer it. So that's me bringing us back on track. Okay, let's see. Okay, Goose, this one's for you. Okay, for someone in the construction industry looking to retire early or manufacturing, what specific financial planning strategies would you recommend, or for lawyers?
Or
for lawyers.
Yeah, I'm taking notes. This is my free advice from you.
I think when you look at it, and so I'm an engineer, so huge DMAIC fan, huge PDCA fan, huge. I learned UDA earlier, like a week ago. It's all about the process you use, and I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they never define what they want within their financial life, and the reason that is so important is, let's say you want to retire early and you just start throwing money back and you don't know where you want to go or what that actually looks like. You just have defined it as this big, luxurious goal. You may be throwing way too much back. which means you can't live life today. And I think it's finding the balance between living life today and reaching whatever that financial security is in the future. And from a specifics perspective, once you define that goal, you got to have a range of, I like to call, tools in your toolbox, especially since we're in construction. You can't put all your money in one area. So you talk about retirement plans. They are great. They have their benefits and you need to use them, especially getting the match, which amazingly a lot of people do not do. So if you don't know whether you're getting your company match, go look at your 401k, go look at your company and see what that match is and at least raise your percentage. That's free money you're giving up. But you also need to put money into what I would consider a taxable brokerage account. That gives you a lot of flexibility as you get closer and closer while still allowing you to grow that money faster than, say, a bank account that's earning you 0.1% interest, or even a high yield savings account that's earning you 4.5% now. It's having that flexibility once you get closer.
Right. I agree with all of that. Personally, I have like a 30-30-30-10 rule, if you will. So like 30% goes toward utilities and like needs, 30% toward savings, and 30% I have to spend to do something fun now because I could get hit by a car tomorrow and I didn't get to go fishing on the White River for something for trout. Like I want to make sure I'm doing something now because when I'm 65, I guarantee my knees are not going to hold up for some of that. And the 10% is like for charity and things like that. But that's just my personal. So I forgot to mention that as part of my tip for avoiding burnout is make sure that you don't just save all the money and work all the time because that's going to contribute to burnout.
I mean, it was something I struggled with for a long time. I was saving everything and not enjoying life.
Right.
And then you got to make sure what you're spending money on aligns with your values. So for me, it's travel. I love good food. I love good wine. Actually, I don't discriminate. Okay, I gotta get off this topic.
I drink Aldi wine. Does that count?
Apparently, we're going back out.
We're always talking about alcohol all of a sudden. How did we get here?
Keith brought it up.
We work in construction and manufacturing, so that's a big part of life. Let's just face it.
Also, like lawyers, I think the statistic is still the lawyers have the second highest addiction rate. So we're all in good company. Okay, getting us back.
Let's reel it under control, guys.
I know. Getting us back on track. Heath's in the waiting room. Okay, so I'm going to bring Heath in just a second, but getting us back on track. I tried to log into the LinkedIn so I could put the link to the StreamYard in the chat, and it went crazy. So here it is up there. If anybody else wants to join us, feel free. We won't bite. We're a lot of good fun. So I'm going to put Heath's question up, and then I'm going to bring him in. Hi, Heath.
Heath.
Woo.
How's it going?
Good. How are y'all doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us. We're super excited you're here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in my vehicle, so
that's all good.
Driving home from work.
We are not incriminating you, I promise.
Okay, so Heath, we got your question from the comments that you left in the event itself, and I've got it up on the banner. But do you want to explain a little bit more about what your question actually is, so that we can hopefully give you some good answers?
Well, I mean, my question was, I think my response to what question you had was about. I actually can't remember because my biggest issue right now is a defaulting subcontractor.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you basically asked a question like that, like how do you deal with a subcontractor that defaults and change management around that? Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Josh,
Megan?
you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, I can. That's fine. Typically, what I've seen is first and foremost, you always have to go off what the contract says. You have to read through. It gives you time frames. You have to give notices. You have to put delay notices in, and then they have a certain time period of how they can respond and have to be able to fix the problem. And if they can't, then you can terminate them. There's also sometimes in your contract to terminate for convenience clause. I'm not going to get into that one 100%, but I don't know if it's enforceable or not because of how one-sided it is. So that's why I don't want to get into it. But there are a lot of avenues, and that's the first thing you want to do is walk through how you successfully can have somebody removed from site, like by the contract, so you can fill somebody else in and make sure that you're not living a big exposed hole financially for your company. Does that align with what you think, Megan?
Yeah. Well, and right now actually we are supplementing labor, so it's kind of it's a big drawn out process and very time consuming. And
yes,
I'm on one of these large projects that you were speaking to earlier that I was joking with you a little bit about. But it's our mechanical contract is approaching 300 million. So,
jeez, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an easy one to pull somebody off of, right? You don't. There's a lot of risk with now grabbing somebody else, hoping all the material is procured right, that they know how to install the new brand, that they have a good relationship with different electrical contractors that are going to do the control wiring or are qualified to do all of that. There's a lot more that goes into a $300 million project than a $50,000, $150,000 renovation.
Yeah. There's
Megan,
a lot on the line there.
Yeah, so I was just going to say quickly on the termination for convenience clause note. I love talking about termination for convenience clauses, so I'm happy to do that. But more importantly, and this I swear is not a plug. Nobody set this up for me, but I actually have a termination for convenience clause guide that I plug occasionally on LinkedIn. So Heath, if you don't have that, shoot me a DM when you're not driving, when it's safe, and I'll send you over my termination for convenience clause guide. Again, I can't give legal advice. I'm not licensed to practice law anywhere other than California, and even California-based construction companies and contractors that can't give you legal advice unless we form an attorney-client relationship, which we have not done just by virtue of you being here. But having said all of my disclaimers, typically termination for convenience clauses, at least in California, are enforceable under most circumstances, despite how one-sided they are, which I agree with you completely, Josh. Yes. I don't love that they're enforceable, but they typically tend to be, at least in California. But that can go both ways, depending on how you negotiate the clause on the front end, and the guide goes into all of those sorts of things. It's a little too late for that for this project for you, Heath, of course, in terms of negotiating both ways and how it can be mutually beneficial to both sides of the contract. But for next time, it might be helpful. And depending on what type of language is in that clause and the project that you're working on now, there might be some helpful information in there for you on that too. But I agree wholeheartedly with Josh's overall position, which is it's all going to come down to what language is in the contract. Now, having said that, and any competent construction attorney, I don't care what state they're in, is going to tell you that the contract, while exceedingly important, is not the end of the conversation, right? There is a thing called equity that does not require a contractor to put themselves out of business and file bankruptcy just because the contract doesn't give them any other way to get out of something. So there are potentially other avenues with the amount of money that we're talking about here. I hope you have a local attorney that is competent when it comes to construction law. They aren't all. But I would definitely say with that amount of money, it would be a great idea to actually talk to a local construction attorney who knows what they're talking about and see what your options really are, because that's a lot of money. And I'm sure you've got a lot more options than you might think you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the company I work for has an internal legal team and everything. So, it was just going through the process has been kind of eye-opening. It's not just about contract exclusions and inclusions. What all the contract reads on our end specifically, but it ties to a lot of other major aspects that is not. There's a lot of attachments to our contract that's very important for people to realize, I think, that you don't just submit a proposal in construction and, get away with not abiding by all the contract documents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really tough to learn some of these lessons that you're saying on a 300 million, or that might be one area. When I did it, it was 300 million only on electrical, and it's a horrible way to learn that for such a big project. So it is important to try to figure some of those things out ahead of time, obviously.
Yeah.
Baby! Sorry, Heath. I got
I
distracted.
asked her to turn on the light.
That's good.
Thank
That's
you.
okay.
I should have blurred the background. Sorry, guys.
We should have had all
No,
we should have had
we
all of our
baby.
kids on this, and then it'd be
Yeah.
way more interesting.
Right? Next time. I'm
The
making a
first
note.
time-
I'm making a note right
Yeah.
now.
Well, my kids
Okay,
are
so-
teenagers, so they'd all be gaming or something.
Oh, well, they'd fit right in. Do they have the gaming headset?
Hey now,
Yeah.
we're not
Right.
gaming dads.
They say some bad words that the little kids don't need to say, though, sometimes, I think.
That's funny. Heath, I'm sorry you're going through that, buddy.
Thank you so much for coming on camera with us. Not everybody's brave enough
Yeah.
to do it. I really appreciate it. Do you have any other
Yeah.
thoughts, questions before we
No, thank
kick
you
you
for
out?
having me. Yeah.
All right, thanks. We hope you stay on for the rest of it. Wait, I need to make sure I'm not banning you. I think just kick from studio, not ban from. If it actually kicks you all the way out, know that I did not do that on purpose. I'm just a newbie who doesn't know what I'm doing. So I'm not trying to ban you. I think I'm just removing you from the screen. But I apologize in advance if I do worse than that.
No worries.
Heath will be
Take care.
removed from the studio. Okay. I think you may have to join again, but you can join again. Okay. I think.
He's like, just get me out of here, please.
Really ban me. God, that would be terrible.
He's like, thanks for making me be the guinea pig.
I
Yeah.
know, right? I know. He was a great sport.
Aye.
We thank you, Heath. We thank you. Okay, next question. Are there any lesser known or newly relevant coverages we need to make sure that our jobs have? Goose, you haven't talked in a while. This one's all you, bud.
Except I have absolutely no idea. This is definitely not a question for me.
All right. How about I'll take this one to start because I haven't offended enough insurance people on this live stream yet. So
Megan, you're gonna be the only one, by the way, that's gonna answer this. I'm
you
like
don't have any.
this.
Okay. All right. Good.
Not
All right,
on
let
the
me just
insurance stuff.
crack my knuckles, get ready to be blocked by the remaining 3 people that I have connected on LinkedIn. So this is great. Sorry, insurance people. By the way, my mom is in insurance. My mom is actually in construction insurance. So it's even she's going to probably block me. So, okay. Any lesser known, newly relevant coverages we need to make sure our jobs have. Okay. This one, my answer to this one might be, and this is like my asterisk, might be state dependent. I don't know whether it is. And if we actually do have any construction people left who are still here and don't hate me entirely, feel free to jump in the chat and I will either throw you up or at least throw your comment up. Correct me if I am wrong, please. But the biggest one that I love that I think is very undervalued because it's very expensive is what we call EPLI insurance, EPLI, Employment Practices Liability Insurance. And what that covers in a state like California, which is incredibly employee friendly, and I think Texas is also super employee friendly. I think Amanda, maybe you can jump in and tell me if I'm right about that. But I know there are some other states that are very employee friendly as opposed to employer friendly. California is very employee friendly. And so it's very easy for employees to sue employers in California, and construction companies are no exception to that. And your CGL policy will not cover those types of claims, but an EPLI policy will, or might, depending on the type of claim. An EPLI policy is going to be far more likely to cover that type of claim than your CGL, which will never cover it. Oh, thank you, Amanda. Amanda tells me I am in fact wrong. Texas is pro-employer. Good. Go run your company in Texas, not in California.
Tesla.
I know, right? Every but so EPLI coverage, it's not going to be one of those insurance coverages that's required in your contract. So it's not one that you have to have in order to like bid the jobs or get the jobs. And so a lot of people don't worry about it. They don't think about it. Like I said, it is pretty expensive coverage to have. But if you have faced a class action, a wage and hour claim, even some types of harassment type discrimination types of claims, some of them can be covered under those policies. So if a company is big enough where they can absorb the cost of an UPLI policy, I am usually a huge proponent of that, particularly if they have a large field labor force, because at that point, it's just statistics. And it becomes a matter of like when, not if. Yeah, exactly. So that's going to be sort of my answer on that one. And a related question that we got in the chat is from Donald. He wants to know if we have any pointers on cybersecurity insurance. Goose, I bet you have some thoughts on that. No.
I mean, if you get outside of insurance for personal reasons, I'm not going to be your guy.
Yeah, this is going to be you're going to have to save that question, Donald, and Megan's going to have to find like a military or government work specific or high level client person that deals with insurance and contracting. I'm guessing because
okay, I will weigh in. I'm going to make sure that I don't show anything I can't show. This right here is, and I'm intentionally showing the back of it. This is a proposal for a cybersecurity insurance policy that I literally have sitting on my desk right now. No lie. That's not a prop. It's real. So I do have some experience with this. I don't, however, have any experience with this for construction companies specifically. I will say from like a general risk mitigation standpoint, certainly I think that a construction company is susceptible to cyber breaches just like any other company, particularly if you're dealing with, you know, high dollar figures, meaning you don't have a slim profit margin, you have, you know, a good, comfortable profit margin. And so with one like that, I think it really is truly going to be on a case-by-case basis. I can say it's certainly not very popular because it's also pretty expensive. And by popular, what I mean is most people decide to just roll the dice. So from a risk management standpoint, they are making what they believe and feel to be an informed decision to roll the dice and gamble. And that's fine. I mean, like, this is when I have to sort of say, like, am I wearing my attorney hat or am I wearing my risk management strategy hat, right? My attorney hat is like, never take any risk at all, right? If you think there's even a remote slight chance that you might have a cybersecurity breach, then you should get the insurance. That's my attorney hat, right? Because that's what you pay me for if you're my client. But my risk management hat is much more reasonable and is much more like, I don't really care how risky you want to be. I just want to make sure that you're doing it knowingly. Like, know what risk you are assuming so that you can attribute the right amount of weight to those risks so that you're better equipped to say, this one is worth rolling the dice on. This one isn't. That's my big thing from proactive risk management is like, make sure you appreciate and properly value the risk that you are taking. And I think cybersecurity insurance falls into that category.
I would like to add something that's not really about the insurance, but about the risk management from a guy who worked at a company who was hacked. And they shut our entire ability to ship down throughout the entire company. Spend the money. Don't try to do it in-house. Spend the money on a firm that knows what they're doing when it comes to cybersecurity. Try to take a 2024 process and take you back to the 1950s is exactly what we had to do. We were running our process and our shipping using Excel. Thankfully, people way smarter than me were able to program Excel so that we could actually keep up with inventory and ship it out and remove things from inventory. But try to do that in about 2 days. And that's what our life was for about 3 weeks. It was miserable, absolutely miserable. And no, it is not fun.
So Heath apparently knows the guy, Andy Runyon. I don't know him. I can't speak to that other than Heath is making a recommendation. So go find Andy Runyon and maybe he'll give you some helpful information on that one.
Do you guys think that with the rise of AI, that all of the cybersecurity insurance is going to become more of like a popular thing or something that's more necessary because AI can do so much more so quickly? Like, you can program it to do good and you can program it to do the worst things, right?
My personal opinion on that is no, because instead what's going to happen is insurance carriers are going to insurance carrier and they're going to make exclusions.
Nah.
Maybe
for
they
AI
might down the
response.
line sell a separate policy that's ridiculously expensive that covers all of the AI shit that they excluded from the other policy. But the very first fucking thing they're going to do is figure out. Oh, sorry, Linton.
She got
Back in the
upset with
paper
us
mill.
about talking about
I
alcohol.
told you I
and we
get
went
passionate
there.
about insurance. I get passionate about insurance. The very first thing that they're going to do is figure out how they don't have to pay out those claims, and so they're going to
Yeah,
immediately do
that's
exclusion.
fair.
That's the first thing they're going to do.
I just didn't know if it's going to become like a requirement in a lot of contracts. If you think that that's going to be an actual thing.
I think the insurance is going to become too expensive, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
what's going to happen is they're going to more people than already are going to get hacked, which is going to create even more a higher demand for this insurance, which is ultimately just going to drive the cost up, which is why people in Florida can't get hurricane insurance because it becomes unaffordable for the insurance company, and insurance companies get out of what doesn't make them money.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's my
everybody knows-
personal opinion.
Everybody knows in California, like it's national news that we can't get fire insurance out here, right? I mean, I live up in the foothills and I'm stuck on the California Fair Plan. It's the same as the hurricane insurance. Like insurance carriers will stop at nothing to figure out how to not pay out claims. Hard stop. I said what I said.
Basically, just cut down all the trees around your house. I used to fight wildfires. This is the perfect segue for that, right? Just cut down all the trees around your house. Make sure you burn it every summer up to that point. That way, nothing can reburn and your house is fine. But make sure it's like a 300-foot perimeter.
A charred yard. I mean, that's like the look I was going for when I bought that house.
The grass grows back beautifully.
It'll grow greener. You can have more deer. It'll be beautiful.
I have plenty of deer, but thank you for that. Lance thinks we need a delay because he's offended by my potty mouth. Sorry, Lance Furuyama, whose name I just said the right way.
We need to censor Megan, apparently.
I know. Nobody's ever going to come.
This is the reason kids can't come.
I know. I'm telling you.
You thought it was going to be us two dads.
I'm spoiling your guys' good name. Like you're going to be forever associated with like the potty mouth girl who only talks shit about insurance. Like I'm so sorry.
Hey, remember that time where I said negative publicity is the best thing, right? Say things that are controversial, and we're going to have all.
We're going to find out if it's true. We're going to find out if it's true. Okay. Let's see. What do we have now? What project management methodologies or tools have you found to be most effective in keeping construction projects on time and within budget? Fight it out. Who wants to answer first?
I can.
I'm going to respond. Nope. I'm going to respond to Josh whenever he says whatever he's got to say.
Ooh.
The methodologies for me is understand the whole flow of what happens, the life cycle of a project, and then make sure you follow it and don't ever put anything off. There's tons of days where it's like a Friday at 1:00 and you're like, well, I don't really want to start doing takeoff because I don't have anything next week. I'll just wait. Just do it because it doesn't take more than 2 or 3 hours anyway. Just do it. That way it's done because I guarantee there's going to be a fire next week. And if you constantly are always trying to be ahead of what's next and you're looking down the road 6 to 12 months, then you're always going to be one step ahead of the whole project and nobody's ever going to be coming after you specifically. The whole way I learned that is actually getting my pilot's license because I just had a conversation with somebody else where I have to know the weather, where I'm going to land at the time I'm supposed to land. And I have to know all the frequencies. I have to do there's a lot of things that go into flying just 10 minutes, 10 miles. And if you don't do it on the ground, you can't do it in the air fast enough. You'll definitely crash or hurt somebody or be stuck up in the air trying to figure out how to land and get down to the right altitude. So
do you wear this headset when you're piloting?
No, I have a better one. It's much bigger.
Oh, okay. Oh,
this one's not noise canceling enough.
I'm gonna need a selfie next time with the bigger headset because this one's honestly far too small.
I could have the one with the goggles too, like the whole flight suit and everything. I could be like Maverick out here.
Goose, this one's for you. Delilah says hi, Daddy.
My little one says hi, Daddy. So along those lines, Josh, I think so. I'm a huge process flow person in mapping out how things are supposed to happen. I've struggled with people in the past not really giving us the true timeline of where they are.
Right.
Because everybody, if they're ahead of schedule, nobody wants to say they're ahead of schedule because, then they don't want to get held to it. So if somebody says they're ahead of schedule, don't give them a hard time for actually meeting schedule because something goes up. That's number one, I have to say. That's the only way you're actually going to get good communication. But most people and most companies and project managers are great at shifting resources to the most important place. If we're not conscientious and we're not communicating well, you're never going to give your project manager time enough to shift those resources where they're needed so that you can get further ahead of schedule.
Right.
Saying the day of that you're done and you're 3 days early, that's not good enough. You needed to be told 2 days ago that, hey, I think I'm gonna come up 2 to 3 days early. And then now you've got time to actually rearrange what's most important so that you can build on that. That's been the biggest issue I've ever had when it comes to a project and project management is, hey, we're done. Hey, you beat your timeline by 3 days.
Right.
You didn't just beat your timeline for 3 days early. You knew 3 days ago you were going to beat your timeline by 3 days.
Right. And to be fair, with what I was kind of getting at, or I guess the construction industry in general, that you have the general contractor who doesn't necessarily have those resources. They are subcontracting others and have to rely on everybody else. So you do need to know, if you're a subcontractor, you need to have technical skills and the ability to understand how long things actually take, because you're literally the last line. GC can tell you all day on paper, here's the schedule, this is what it says, you agreed to that, whatever. But you know if your generator's late, you know if your foreman got fired, you know if you can't find any additional help. And so you need to convey that. And then also with the staying on budget, the whole reason I bring up the process is because for me, the process is day one, I get a project awarded. If I have a notice to proceed, or if I sign the contract, or whatever date you want to set as like the D-Day of when you start everything, you need to procure all of your material. You need to procure all of your subcontractors, even if it's a year out. There's no point in putting it off because the cost will escalate. I guarantee lights go up 10% a year. Generators are going up ridiculous prices. Copper
inflation is real, guys. Yeah. Inflation is real. We all seen the cost of eggs. Although they have come back down.
Well, eggs are free for me. I got chickens.
Farmer.
but like even commodities, like the cost of copper, if you bid the job and the price is good for 2 weeks because you have that relationship with your vendor, you need to buy it then, because if you wait 3 weeks, it could go up 50%. If you look back at historical data the last 3 years with COVID or other things happening. So it's really important just to realize, and you're the subject matter expert. GCs need to get on board with aligning subs up faster. Subs need to get on board with owning that they know their industry. And if you don't, you need to start asking questions about, what do I need to know so I can keep on schedule with everything? What's the right process? Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
It's okay. We all have ours. Mine's
well, I didn't like cuss though. So
hey, that cut deep.
Points for Josh.
This is a perfect segue. We'll talk about toxic positivity.
I don't think so. I don't know. Ooh, okay. So I'm so glad. So I was going to tell you guys we only have one question left. So I was going to see if anybody had one, and Lance popped up with a question. So we're going to pivot to Lance's question before we go with our last question. But I am going to make sure we have time for our last question, Goose, because I know it's one that you were the most excited about. But here's Lance's first. What is the best way to ramp up on risk knowledge if oh, wow. Oh, Lance. Look at Lance setting us up. All right. So everybody pinch what you're selling. Go.
Well, I know nothing about risk. So
this is just a me.
This is a Megan specific thing. Now, obviously, like, know your contract. Like, that's, if you don't know it, find somebody that you resonate with that does. I mean, that could be Megan, that could be Goose with your personal finance, that could be me with project management process, that could be literally anybody, and there's other people that teach it too. So like I know tons of construction management trainers, and I will advocate for them all day because there's probably 13 million people in the world that do construction, and I don't want to be the one that trains them all, right? I'd rather make sure we're all helping as much as we can. So I'll always advocate for that. But regardless, just find somebody that you resonate with.
Agreed. I mean, I think we all have weak spots. We can't be great at everything. That's the reason we all do what we're doing, is because there's a need for it. Don't try to go learn it yourself, because it's going to take you 10 or 15 years to get where you need to be. And that costs you way more than it would be having somebody else come in, teach it to you, review your stuff, and help get you there much, much quicker.
Right, especially with your financial stuff, like 10 years is the difference between like 300,000 in savings and 600,000 in savings. Like that drastic.
Oh my God, you're making me sweat. Oh.
I mean, that's the difference between 20 years of saving and 30 years of saving. So, I mean, that's like an average American saving, by the way, 300 to 600,000. I'm not just throwing numbers out there, and it's exponential. That's like $10,000 a year. Pretty typical. That's your 401k, put it that way. Go ahead, Megan.
Well, my answer to this is less benevolent than Josh's answer to this. I'm not going to say go to anybody else. I'm going to say come to me, because I'm the best when it comes to proactive risk management.
And I will agree.
I just am. So, no, I'm only half kidding. I don't have anything to sell yet. Everybody knows I've got like a wait list for something that doesn't yet exist. So I don't really have anything to sell yet. So it's fine. Okay, let's see. Your last question, Goose. What is the difference between cost savings and cost avoidance? You've been waiting all day.
Okay.
We got here.
Josh actually looked it up, and it's the difference between hard savings and soft savings. But people, I hope there's no financial people on here that are running projects outside, So the difference between cost savings is saving today versus what you may be able to save. So for instance, in a risk management perspective, am I willing to spend the money today so that I can reduce my litigation costs later, so I can reduce my insurance costs later, and or not let my insurance costs go up? Do not let somebody in a corner office that's never been out into the field derail a project because you know what's the right thing to do, because there's no hard savings associated with it. One lawsuit will probably pay for 20 years worth of risk mitigation strategies at the front end. So, yes, plug for Megan. It does mean a lot to me, because I saw so many projects in manufacturing get derailed because they weren't considered cost savings. They were considered cost avoidance. And it just to drive me nuts, because they were great projects that just fell on deaf ears because they didn't fit our so-called goals.
Yeah, like Goose said, I had to Google this because even as a CFO, I was like, to me, they're one and the same, right? If I want to buy a tool because it's going to save labor, apparently that's considered cost avoidance because it's not guaranteed to save money, right? It's going to be your PPE, getting the right size, like you guys were talking about earlier, getting like women appropriate PPE. That's a lawsuit you save on that you don't realize, in 10 years. And that's actually, I saw an ad the other day. It's actually cheaper to buy women's clothing. It's just, you don't just buy it in bulk and then hope that it's going to be used all like a men's would, because we all know when people enter the industry, it's like a revolving door sometimes, where here's your hard hat and vest, and then they're gone the next day. So you have to, women seem like they're a little more trustworthy to give a hard hat and a vest to, and they're going to come back the second day. So maybe I'm losing my mind over here, but I think it's money ahead, in my opinion. But yeah, the difference between like hard savings and soft savings, like hard skills, technical, guaranteed, versus soft skills. Like you can't measure EQ, you can't measure cost avoidance items.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Megan, your turn.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to agree with everything Goose said. So, no, but really, I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge, is getting construction leaders to really truly understand that the sort of cost avoidance is cost savings, It's just delayed cost savings in the long run. Wait, did I say that? Did I get that backwards? Did I say that?
No, you got it right. It's just you can't
Okay, good.
tangibly see like, oh, it saved me $10 return on investment over 5 years.
Right. And that's sort of why my whole thing is increasing revenue through proactive risk management, because it's not necessarily something that when you look at the, at the P&L each month, each week, however often you're looking at your P&L, you're not going to necessarily see it right away. But that's why you have to have the sort of forecasty long-term vision of what's the true value in taking these steps now. To me, it's no different than any other business decision where you are prioritizing, like front loading the cost for something that you may not see the payoff on, like equipment, like a fleet,
The tires.
Yeah. Right. Even office equipment, right? Oh, when we need new computers, like the old ones are still working, but who knows when they're going to die in the moment. So let's just go ahead and spend the money now and get new computers. We're not necessarily going to see the payoff for that, maybe tangibly ever, because you never actually saw the old computers fail, right? But intellectually, they were going to fail at some point if you didn't replace them. And so I think that's the challenge. I think that's the trick right there. And if you can figure out, or if I can figure out, if anybody can figure out how to get them to sort of flip it and look at it that way, that's the golden ticket right there. And with that, we're at our hour.
I just want to throw this out there. If your CFO only looks at your P&L weekly or monthly, you need a new CFO. You should probably look at it daily. It changes every day, so it's kind of nice to look at.
See, I don't know that because I don't have my own fraction CFO.
I'm all about micro trends. That's how you figure out the big trends. Anyway, we're at an hour. It was fun.
Well, thank you both so much for doing this. I know it was probably a little different than what you thought it was going to be, but I really appreciate both of you taking the time out of your busy days and taking it away from your wives and your children. Thank them for me as well.
Will do. Hudson will say, blah, 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 blah. Because he can't talk yet.
That's okay, as long as he's feeling better. That's all I care about.
He is so cute and awesome.
All right, I'm going to hit the end stream button, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to kick the two of you off too, or if it's just going to disconnect us from
find out.
LinkedIn.
Nice
so we're going to find out.
It was nice to do this.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
You guys stay
Bye,
on just because I
world.
want to know what happens. So don't
Okay.
don't disconnect. I want to see what happens.
I'm going to hang up now.